Your body adapts downward when daily movement disappears. Stop walking every day, and you do not just lose a few calories of expenditure. You reduce muscular contraction across the day, lower circulatory demand, cut down the repeated insulin-sensitizing effect of movement, and spend more time in the exact sedentary pattern associated with worse cardiometabolic health. The shift can happen faster than most people think. Experimental step reduction studies have shown that even about 2 weeks of sharply reduced daily steps can worsen insulin sensitivity, reduce cardiorespiratory fitness, and in older adults contribute to losses in leg lean mass and a more diabetic metabolic profile. That is the first principle. Walking is not filler activity. It is low-cost regulatory input. When you walk daily, your calf muscles act like a peripheral pump for venous return. Your joints cycle through low-grade loading and lubrication. Your autonomic nervous system gets frequent chances to downshift, and your skeletal muscle keeps taking up glucose in a way that helps the metabolic system stay cooperative. Remove that daily signal, and the body becomes more efficient at inactivity. Energy expenditure falls, posture stiffens, sitting time rises, and the baseline quality of circulation, glucose handling, and movement readiness starts to drift in the wrong direction. The CDC and American Heart Association both frame regular physical activity, including brisk walking, as one of the core inputs for cardiovascular health, sleep, mood, and disease prevention. And the national guidelines still center around at least 150 minutes of moderate activity each week, because the dose response is that consistent. Now get more precise about what stop walking daily actually does. First, your metabolic system becomes less forgiving. Walking is one of the easiest ways to interrupt prolonged sitting, and even light walking breaks can reduce post-meal glucose and insulin responses compared with uninterrupted sitting. So when daily walking disappears, meals often land harder metabolically, especially if your job already keeps you seated and your sleep is mediocre. That is why people often feel off before they see a dramatic weight change. Their glucose control is a little worse, their energy is flatter, and their afternoon appetite becomes less stable. Second, your cardiovascular system loses repeated, low-level conditioning. Daily walking is not the same as a hard training session, but it maintains a baseline of circulatory work that helps support vascular function, blood pressure control, and aerobic readiness. Remove it, and you often feel it as easier breathlessness on stairs, heavier legs, or a faster slide into deconditioning than your ego expects. Third, your musculoskeletal system stiffens when it stops getting easy motion. Walking is joint-friendly repetition. Ankles move, hips extend, the ribcage rotates, the spine gets small but meaningful rhythm, and the feet keep doing their job as sensory and mechanical interfaces with the ground. When you stop walking, you usually do not become rested, you become less practiced. That matters because biomechanics are partly a software problem. If you stop giving the body repeated, clean reps, gait economy, tolerance for standing, and lower leg resilience all start to erode. In older adults, or people already near the edge of frailty, the consequences are bigger. Less movement can mean lower physical function, worse balance confidence, and faster loss of independence if the pattern persists. The CDC specifically highlights physical activity as supporting daily function, independence, sleep quality, mental health, and brain health, especially as people age. Fourth, your nervous system and sleep system feel it. Walking is not just locomotion, it is rhythm. It gives your day a useful pulse break, reduces stress load for many people, and improves mood and sleep quality in ways official guidance repeatedly notes. When walking disappears, the loss is often indirect. Less daylight exposure, fewer mental resets, more continuous screen time, more sympathetic tone, and worse transition between work and recovery. Then people say, I stopped walking, but I don't think that should matter this much. It matters because the body does not only count exercise in gym terms, it counts all movement as information. The same public health sources that recommend regular activity for cardiovascular risk also tie movement to better mood, more energy, and better sleep. This is where most people misunderstand the problem. They think if they still train 3 times a week, losing the daily walk should not matter. Sometimes that is partly true. A person who still lifts, does cardio, and moves a lot on weekends is not in the same hole as someone who goes from 8,000 steps to 1,500 and sits all day. But that is exactly the point. Walking is not competing with training. It is the baseline that makes training easier to absorb. You can crush one hard session and still spend the rest of the week undermoved. The guidelines themselves tell you to move more and sit less, not just to accumulate a few isolated bouts of exercise. So the strategic reason daily walking matters is compliance architecture. It keeps the body from becoming sedentary between the real workouts. So apply this like a coach. If you stop walking daily because work got busy, your first response is not to replace all of it with one punishing cardio session. Your response is to restore movement frequency first. If your body has gone from naturally active to desk-bound, reinsert short walks after meals, between work blocks, or at the same transition points where walking used to happen automatically. If you notice the first signs are metabolic, sleepier after meals, hungrier later, less steady energy, start with post-meal walks because that directly addresses the problem you are creating. If the first signs are orthopedic, stiff hips, tight calves, cranky low back, use shorter, more frequent walks rather than one long march that irritates everything at once. If the first signs are mood and recovery, flat afternoons, more stress, worse sleep onset, use walking earlier in the day and near daylight, because then it supports both movement and circadian timing. Do not overcomplicate the dose. If you have stopped walking completely, 10 minutes done 3 times a day beats waiting for a perfect 45-minute block that never happens. If your fitness is low, use a pace where you can still talk, but you are clearly moving with intent. Let your arms swing, let the stride stay natural, and do not turn the first week into a step count ego contest. If you are older, heavier, recently ill, or coming back from a sedentary stretch, consistency matters more than ambition. If you already train hard, use walking as recovery infrastructure, not as punishment. And if pain is the reason you stopped, that changes the programming. Reduce impact, shorten the duration, change the surface, or get the pain assessed instead of pretending the solution is more discipline. Here's where most people stop, but here's the advanced layer. You do not judge your walking habit by steps alone. You judge it by what happens downstream when it disappears and when it returns. Track your morning resting heart rate, your post-meal energy, your afternoon cravings, your sleep onset, your tolerance for standing, and how quickly your legs feel heavy on stairs. If you have metabolic risk factors, pay attention to waist trend, blood pressure, fasting glucose, or A1C with your clinician. The advanced layer is that daily walking is a load management tool. It is the lowest friction way to keep the system metabolically awake without creating a recovery debt. For some people, 6,000 honest steps with better sleep and 2 strength sessions is a stronger week than 11,000 scattered steps, no lifting, and chronic fatigue. For others, daily brisk walking is the missing piece that keeps body weight, mood, and blood pressure from drifting. Personalization matters, but not in a vague way. It matters in the signals you track. To make it stick, remove the need to decide. Tie walking to anchors that already happen. After breakfast, after lunch, after your last meeting, after dinner, during phone calls, at the point where you usually reach for another coffee, or at the point where work would otherwise bleed into the evening. Keep shoes visible. Use one default route. Use weatherproof fallback rules such as indoor laps, stairs, or treadmill walking when conditions are bad. Combine it with the other systems that fail when walking disappears. Eat in a way that supports stable energy. Keep sleep regular. Lift at least twice a week if you can. And do not let stress convince you that movement is optional when stress is exactly why you need it. And test the habit under pressure. On travel weeks, walk terminals, hotel hallways, or city blocks. During deadlines, shrink the walk but do not delete it. During plateaus, do not assume walking has stopped working. First check whether your pace softened, your frequency dropped, or your sitting time exploded around it. The detail worth replaying is this. When you stop walking daily, the problem is rarely one dramatic symptom. It is the quiet loss of repeated signals that keep the whole system regulated. Circulation, glucose handling, joint motion, mood, sleep, and recovery. And once you see that, the fix becomes less emotional and much more mechanical.